Today we're going to look at how you can connect Google AppSheet to Zapier. And if you're not familiar with what Zapier is, it's a service that lets you connect apps together. So for example, we're going to use it here to connect AppSheet to Slack so that we can automatically send a message to a Slack channel whenever a record is created in AppSheet. Usually that's the kind of thing that requires coding via an API or application programming interface, but Zapier lets you do it with no code, just like you can create user interfaces with no code in AppSheet. Okay, let's jump in. For this example, let's say that we have an inventory management system in AppSheet where we track all of our inventory and place new orders with vendors when we need additional inventory. And we have one vendor who wants us to send them our orders in Slack. And we still want to keep everything in AppSheet so that we have consistency with all of our other vendors and orders that we're placing. But for this vendor, we just want to automatically send them that Slack message whenever we need a new order. So this is our AppSheet app. We have a form for entering orders, and for vendors, it's a enum value where we can select from a list of different vendors. And in this case, the one that we want to send the Slack messages is for Spacely Space Sprockets. So if any of these other vendors are selected, we just want to create the order in AppSheet. But if Spacely Space Sprockets is selected, we want to both create the order in AppSheet and actually send the Slack messages. So to set this up, we start on the Zapier side. I'm going to go over to Zapier.com. If you don't already have an account there, you'd have to create one and register. And once you do that, you'd land on a screen that looks like this. And what we want to do for this is create a new Zap, which is an automated workflow, very similar to the workflows and automations that we have or bots that we have in AppSheet. So again, this does look very similar to AppSheet as far as the things that you can select, triggers and actions. In AppSheet, these are called steps. But for the trigger, we want to select a webhook. And this is basically, we're going to receive a webhook, which is a web request that's going to be sent from AppSheet. So I select webhook. And for the trigger event, I'm going to say catch hook, which is basically means accept this web request. And I want to hit continue. I can hit continue for the next step as well. And then what it did is it came up with a URL that we're going to actually make the request to. That's up at the top here. I'm going to copy that. And then it says we're listening. And basically what you can do to get this started is actually make a request to that, and it'll see what the structure of the data that AppSheet or whatever other service that you're trying to integrate with is actually sending. And then in the further steps, once we've actually given it that sample, we can choose the values that we want to process a particular step, in this case to send a Slack message. So next thing from here is we want to go back over to AppSheet again. We want to go to our automations there, and we want to create a new automation. And for the event, what we want to do is say that a new order is added. And the condition is going to be that the vendor, so I'm going to hit vendor equals, then I'll hit a double quote to select from the available values. We'll say the vendor equals Spacely Space Sprockets. So again, we only want to run this in the case that the vendor is Spacely Space Sprockets, because that's the only one that we want to send the Slack messages for. So I'm going to hit save there. And then down below that, we don't need to change anything else. Up here, we're just going to call this order placed for Spacely. And that is good. And then the next thing we want to do is add a step. So we're going to say create new step. And this step is going to be to call a webhook, and that is basically means to call Zapier. We want the URL to be that value that I just copied from Zapier. So I'm going to paste that right there. And we want the HTTP verb to be post. That basically means it's going to send the request as a post request, which is a certain type of request to the Zapier side. And then the content type we want to leave as JSON. And then the body, you'll see there's a note here that says that if you leave this empty, it sends a default body. So basically the default body just sends over all the information from AppSheet, including like the app name, the date and time that it was sent, all the values that were sent in this particular record. So that's fine for this case. We don't need to go and pull specific values out. We can just send everything over to Zapier, and once it's there, we'll figure out what we want to actually pull out from that request and put into the Slack message. So that's all good, and everything else here is fine to leave as is, at least for this example. So I'm gonna, one final thing, we'll call this send message via Slack, and then we'll rename our bot to send spacely orders via Slack, and we will save that. So that is done. So again, Zapier is already listening for these requests to come in. So now if I actually go back into my app again and I create one of these, I'm going to select Spacely as the vendor. I'm going to say that I want to order sprockets. That doesn't look right, but I guess that's... spelling just doesn't look right to me, but I guess it is. And then 10... I'm going to say that I want 10 sprockets. I'm going to hit save. That goes and sends it across. And now if I go back to the Zapier side and I say test trigger, you see it comes up and says that request A was actually received here. And so if I click on that, it's got all the information that was sent over from AppSheet. So it's got the application name, the table name, and then the data, including the vendor, sprockets, the item name, and the quantity, and notes, which I didn't provide in that case. So basically, this is that default format that we opted to use by selecting nothing in the AppSheet automation side. It's actually a JSON request that has these values within it. And again, once we get into our step, we're going to actually pull those values out and include them in the Slack message that we're going to send. Okay, so that completes the setup for the webhook. For the step, you click down here on action. There's a ton of different things that you can integrate with on the Zapier side. Again, here we're going to use Slack, so I'm just going to select that. My action message is I want to scroll down here. These are all different types of things you can do within Slack. I want to send a channel message, which is basically just sending a message to a Slack channel. And then I want to select the account that I want to actually do that for. So I've already set up my account in here, or linked my account, my Slack account, into Zapier. If you hadn't done that yet, there's an option here to sign in. You'd sign into your Slack account. You'd authorize it to be able to actually send messages from Zapier, and then you would select it similar to what I'm doing here to actually say that's the account that you want Zapier to send the messages to. So that's done. I'm going to hit continue. And then the next thing I need to do at the top here is select the channel that I want to send it to. So I've created a channel called Spacely Orders. That's what I want to actually send these Slack messages to. And then down here, I can specify the text that I want to send. So I'm going to start with a template. We'll say we're going to send this to George. George is our contact at Spacely. So I'm going to say, hi, George. We would like to order the following items. And then I will say item, and then I want to populate here the value that came over in that request from AppSheet. So to do that, you can click this plus up here, and it's got data and item name. So I'm going to select that right there. So it's going to say item : and then it's going to fill it in with whatever the item name that came over. Next, I want to say quantity, and I'm going to say data quantity, and then I'm going to say notes, and we will fill in data notes. And I'll say thanks, please confirm when you've received this. Okay, so that is now done, and what I can do now, I can leave all these other values as default. I can hit continue here, and what I want to do is test this step. So basically what this is going to do is take that initial test request that we sent over from AppSheet, take the data from that request and actually test the step. So in order to do that, I'm just going to hit test step. And now if I go over to Slack, you see that that message just came in with that template that we provided, with the data that came over in that sample AppSheet request. And it works exactly as we wanted, filling in the blanks there with the information that came over from that request. So that looks good. I'm going to hit publish. That is now published. And everything is actually now completely wired up. So this will work in real time now if I go back and do the same thing again. So let's, in Slack, just delete the test messages that we sent. And let's go back over to Zapier, or sorry, to AppSheet again. Let's create another order. We're going to again select Spacely. This time I'm going to order cogs. And I'm going to order 5 of them. And I'm going to say, please expedite on this one. And save. You see up in the upper right-hand corner there, that completed. And now we have the, we see that order showed up here in Slack in real time and has all the information populated, cogs with my notes and everything. So that's how you can make outbound requests from AppSheet to Zapier. And one really interesting thing is you can also, in one of those steps, make requests back into AppSheet again. So if you wanted to actually update some data in AppSheet after you sent the Slack message, you could create another step to be able to do that. So it really is able, through Zapier, to be able to send that information both ways. If you're using Zapier from within your AppSheet apps, I would love to hear how. Please let me know down in the comments. And if you'd like to learn more about everything you can do with Google AppSheet, be sure to subscribe to this channel. That's it for today. Thanks for watching and happy building.